Hey guys! So today you and I are going to talk about deadlines. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, hi Frederick, what would you do when the deadline is approaching and you haven't completed the task? I would think about how much I could cut away from the thing I'm doing safely, and I would make sure that I inform my stakeholders of that I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to finish this up and so forth. Basically communicate the situation as quickly as possible, because that at least gives us some options of what we can do. What usually happens in this situation is, at least if it's a working environment, there are situations where this does not work, where people sort of freak out, or this is usually where a manager or team lead or the different types of characters that you might have around you sort of show their colors. Because what should happen now is that your product manager, your team lead, your whoever is dealing with the situation, they should look at the options available. Can they add more people to this? Is it possible that there's someone who's going to be able to do it faster, etc., etc.? There are options that you can try out, uh, because as I like to say, the problem is what the problem is. And if you don't have the time and you need more time, then either they give you more time or we start doing tacticals, as we call it, where you might descope things that are not so important. You might change the implementation, or like reduce the amount of stuff. Well, that's basically the descope things. You're basically trying to solve the everlasting problem. Either you try to move quicker or reduce how much work you have to do. And those are usually the only options available to you. You can, of course, also just extend the deadline if that's possible. Say, like, be late and see what happens. Usually I find that being late for a deadline isn't much of a deal. Sometimes it is, but for the most part it's fine. But for me personally, when this is the way I would deal with it, and it used to be something that I of course felt was fairly stressful and so forth. But as I've said in a few videos now, guys, it sucks, but it is a reality that you won't always be able to meet the deadline. And if you can get to that emotional state where you sort of realize that you are probably, I'm assuming now, like, it's easy when you've been working for a while. If you are a very good software developer and you've done your best, then there was no way, then fundamentally there was no way for you to meet this deadline. Because, as I like to say, there's reasonable expectations that you can put on any given situation. And what I mean by that is that, I think I made that analogy a while back now, where I said that if you hire a bunch of movers, then it's reasonable that you're going to get a bunch of ordinary people who's going to move your boxes. But if you are going to, like, if you think that you're going to get a bunch of bodybuilders or like super athletes that are going to be able to do it in a fraction of the time a normal person is going to, then you have expectations that are sort of warped. It's the same thing with software development. If you have a deadline that isn't really realistic for the team that you're dealing with and the state of the code base and all these sorts of things, then it's as I've said to many juniors, this is not going to help you deal with the stress all that much. But there are so many factors that determine whether you meet a deadline or not, and I'm not going to try to sugarcoat it. Sometimes you are a slow software developer. It's that simple, at least in comparison to other people. I've worked with many software developers who feel anxiety over, and I mean, I was that way as well, who feel anxiety over that they're slow and they're not going to be able to finish and stuff like that. And at least when I am the team lead or something like that, I try to sort of put myself in their shoes and realize that there is no reason here for me here to make them feel worse about the fact that they're slow, or make them feel worse about that they might not meet the deadline and so forth, because at that moment, as the team lead or manager or whatever I am, I should, which at least I should be more focused on reaching the goal as opposed to blaming someone for not reaching the goal. And that basically means that I need to figure out how can I make this, as I said, either make the task easier or increase velocity on the subject. Usually you can do one or two things. You can add like a buddy or something like that that might be able to help out with the task, or as I said, you have to figure out a way to simplify the problem, either by finding more time or reducing how much work that needs to be done. But for you who's sitting with a task, try to remember that being stressed over the fact that you're late or like you're not going to meet the deadline, it's going to suck. I'm not going to lie, but it's not. It doesn't change reality. It's one of those things where you feel bad about it and then you do your best and then you shock that down as a learning opportunity or a failure, call it whatever you want, right? And then you just push through it and move on because life is tough sometimes. So what I want you to take away from this is that at least the way that I try to deal with not meeting a deadline is to be very transparent with the fact as early as possible, even when I suspect that this is probably not gonna, I'm probably not gonna be able to finish this. Try to like it's sort of like those movies where you try to lighten the load of the plane because it's low on fuel or something like that. You start tossing stuff out that may not be super important. You can't throw everything out, but you can try to reduce the problem so that it's easier to deal with or find more time or something like that. And then the other option is that by just communicating to your stakeholders and your teammates and so forth and asking for help, that you might be able to get some like help from your team or someone else that can come in and sort of, I mean, in some cases I've said this to people as well, guys. I've swallowed my pride and just said that I know that that and that person knows this a lot better than me. It might be better if they take over and do it because they're going to be faster. Like you sort of just acknowledge that you're not the right person for this specific situation. And I don't really feel much shame for that because I am a very strong believer in that everybody who acts honorably and with wisdom should know when you are the person for the job and when you're not the person for the job, and be okay with that. Nobody's perfect in every situation. And usually what happens in these situations, I find that this mitigates most of the issue. And it's very rare that a deadline is like really, really sharp deadline and there's problems and so forth. I'm not going to lie. There are going to be situations where people are going to hold you responsible for this and be upset, etc., etc. It depends on who the type of managers and bosses you have. But as I said as well, guys, sometimes life sucks. It's that simple. You get put in a situation where you can't really win, and the only thing you can do is to do the thing that I like. Well, it's not mine. It's the, what is it? The stochastic thing. Be a rock. Sit down. Let the storm like rain on you, and like yeah, it's not fun to get rain on you, but after the storm passes, you continue on. That's basically what you have to do. Have a great day.